in all my endeavors, I probably have like two strengths, one or two big strengths. And that's like, and then everything else is like secondary, tertiary. Just be focused on developing those because that's where you'll have, I think, the most success.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
Thank you all so much for joining us on another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. Today we have with us my friend Peter Pomeroy. So Peter, thank you so much again for joining us here. And I'd like to start the conversation off by, asking you to share with us a bit about yourself and, maybe something fun that most people wouldn't know about you.
Yeah, sure. So about myself. So I have about a little over 20 years of experience in real estate in a number of different areas: brokerage, construction, investment, development, asset management. And I've worked from kind of large companies to very small entrepreneurial companies, and have really enjoyed all of those experiences. Something about myself that's a little different is, so in college, I was a fine arts major. And so my specialty was sculpture. We were talking a little bit about that. And I did large kind of outdoor sculpture with, that were primarily with steel. And so, the creative element has always been important to me. So there you go.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the creative element, we have sort of like a million ways to express that, right? And but clearly you found a way that really, my assumption is, creates a lot of fulfillment for you. And so let me just ask you this. When it comes to working on, sculpture, which blows my mind, like steel, that's not easy, right? And so, but we're really in this state of flow. Can you sort of share with us, some sort of emotions that come along with that, and maybe how you find yourself getting into a state of flow? Like, do you have a routine or a sort of a, ritual kind of thing that helps you there?
I think I think for me, it's just like I'll think a lot about like what I want to do. And I remember like going back in time when I did this a lot. And then what to get into the flow is, or like momentum for me, is to just start to take action. And so I'll start to build something and I'll have an idea. And as we were talking before, it might go in a completely different direction than I thought. But then the emotion is I think working through it to like get to completion. And so that's not too and so I went from doing sculpture to real estate, and in many ways there's like some similarities in that if you're working on if you're evaluating a property, however the financial aspect, the construction element, you're kind of working through what that analysis to like completion, and that completion in the business context has to do with satisfying a return on investment. That's kind of like how that's measured, and the risk taken to do that. So you have to like, keep the context of what you're evaluating in mind. Whereas like a sculpture, there's a kind of a vision or whatever that you're trying to get to. And there is a point when you're like done is done, or done for a while, and you need to move away from it. Similarly, like if you were to take an apartment building or whatever, and you wouldn't want to over improve it to a point where the investments that you're making and putting into it, are no longer, going to provide a yield for the investors and truthfully, benefit to the tenants.
Yeah, Peter, I love that you're actually like comparing, steel sculpture to, value add apartment, complex that a team would take on. let me ask you this, because my assumption is that with a steel sculpture, you're looking at a 3 to 6 month, maybe year completion time. What are you typically shooting for, or do you kind of let the sculpture, dictate that, or do you like to be more in control of when it's going to be complete?
Well, it can be a lot faster than that. It can be a day, it can be a week. And I think that actually, putting like time limits on it is important, and also like resource limitations. So like I might go now into my garage to do something and say, okay, my challenge is that I'm only going to use the materials that are here, and I have to have something done by 5 p.m. And just challenge myself there. And it's almost like an iteration, and doing multiple iterations. And then I guess at some point, if I was, doing successful sculpture, I might have a different resources to work with and time and all that. But I mean, I don't think at least for me, I don't want to, let too much time go by before completing, any kind of project, whether it's a sculpture or real estate or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm similar, and thanks for clearing that up. For me, I would compare my songwriting to your sculpture, right? And
Right.
so I really usually at the most only have 5 hours to do a song. And so I have to get it done. The old me, where I really had to work through, I would just have pieces of art or pieces of music. And that will just lead you to never completing anything, right? So really
Right.
being intentional about completing. And you absolutely need that when you're, doing value add to an apartment complex, for example, real estate. And so, so I love that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great about the 5 hours for a song. I remember we had talked about that a while ago. And it would be easy, I would imagine, to have like, dozens of like half completed songs, and to force yourself to complete it, and maybe it's just version 1 of the song, and, but at least it's a complete version 1.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And it's the iterations too, right? I believe
Right.
there's a saying that I learned from Brian Tracy, like a long time ago. He really helped me break through this period where I was stuck with artist block, right? And I wasn't completing stuff, music or art. And even, with my skateboarding, this is like I was 19 years old. His phrase was, within quantity, you will find quality. I think you and I talked about that just a couple of weeks ago too.
Right.
And so it's just like giving ourselves permission to not have a beautiful, crazy, awesome, perfect, product when we're done. And through a lot of those, again, iterations, we can improve that quality.
I think that is, I'm glad you brought up that, through like quantity, you'll find some quality in there. I think that I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's such a good reminder in so many things, whether it's like, the songs you're doing, or if I'm doing like artwork, or, evaluating deals. How many times have you heard, oh, I had to look at 100 deals to find one that was good, or 200 deals to, and that's like, quantity. And then there's a quality piece there. And it's so easy to say, oh, I want to like do it, like start off on anything, doing artwork, songs, real estate. And, the first deal that comes over to your desk, you're like, oh, this is going to be it. And then you spend, 20 hours underwriting it for whatever reasons, when you should have like been like, I got 5 hours or 2 hours or 30 minutes or 15 minutes. So that's a really good lesson.
It's a good point. Yeah, no, we're getting a lot of good lessons out of just this conversation.
It's
so far.
Helping me. Right?
Me too, for sure. Thank you, Peter. And let me ask you this question here. How do you define success for yourself? And would you say that you've attained it, or maybe kind of a balance? But what are your thoughts there?
I don't know. I knew this question was coming, and I was thinking about it beforehand, and I want to like say something that's like real pithy, but I think, so for myself, I think, here's how I was thinking about that. I was thinking about like when I was younger, in my say 30s, and I was working, I was at a large commercial brokerage. And so success then was, working a lot of hours and being in the top 10 and my, getting big deals. These were brokerage deals. They were, I was representing tenants and they're acquiring leased office space. That was what I was doing. And, super competitive. And that was what success was. And then, then I was like, oh, I want to be a real estate investor, developer, investor, let's say. And so success for me was like achieving milestones, going down that path to, do that in a real single-minded focus. And I wouldn't at all change anything. And I wouldn't even say, oh, and then I got there and how's that metaphor? The ladder was up on the wall, but it was the wrong wall or whatever. Like, that's not the case at all. I was super stoked to, do what I've done, but now, a bit older and maybe people will hear this and be like, duh, like what took you so long? But now I'm like, oh, my health is important. Spending time, I'm remarried. I've got 2 young kids and spending time with them and all these things that you hear kind of in your 30s and 40s. And I heard them as well. And I was like, whatever. Truthfully, that's kind of what I was probably thinking that, maybe not consciously, but now I'm like, oh no, I take that seriously. So success has changed over time. And, now it's, it's a more, multifaceted, picture, like this artwork that we were talking about. I just spent the last, it feels like, several months, like building out a studio in my garage. And that took a lot of time and resources to do that. And then as we were talking this last week or so, I've been getting materials and, and I'm resource, constrained. I'm not going to spend $1 gazillion to get a bunch of stuff I don't even know what I'm doing with. And so, success for me is being able to have time to do that, that stuff and convince my wife it's going to be okay.
Yeah. That's key at the end right there, right?
Right.
Convince your wife
She's a big supporter.
One of the takeaways, maybe the best takeaway from what you just shared with me is that, success for you is malleable. I'm not sure how you say that.
Yeah.
You're really in control of it, in sort of like your sculpture. You can make it look how you want it to look. And right now it looks like this. Right. And, I'm with you. It's so interesting as we're, younger, we're so like wound up to compete and we're experiencing all this stuff. And, it's very easy to put your, family and your health lower down on the priority list. And it's also such a big mistake. So many of us do this and, I guess we could all, learn from ourselves and from other people like Uncle Scrooge, for example. Right. And, but yeah, I think that's great. A great way to define success right now. And also remember, like for me, and I think all of us, it's important to remember that we can change it. It doesn't, it's not set in stone,
and it's also like really difficult. And I'm like, struggle with this every day to not think of success as financial success. I believe that like there's like I was saying, that their success is a much bigger, it's a bigger picture than just financial success, but then, then I forget that instant, pretty quickly. And, that's what I'm thinking about. So, and the other thing is I've been thinking about is I've made, I've had a pretty entrepreneurial like business career. And so like there've been like some like financial successes or accomplishment successes, and then ones that like, financial like losers, and, that's the bet you make. That's the bet I've made. And it's the bet I wanted to make. One of my first jobs was working as a management consultant for, a big company, Deloitte. And I could have stayed on that track and been a partner and all that stuff. And that would have been very different than saying, no, I want to I left Deloitte and I went to go work for Collier's, 0 salary, 100% commission, no benefits, no insurance. And that was the bet I made. And I was, that's the bet. That's what I chose to do. And so, that's been important to me. So success has been like, there's been an element of like, if I were to define success, now that we're talking about success, it would be, for me, what has been important is, having that freedom of choice to do that stuff. But it's, it hasn't always been like financially successful. Sometimes it has. I mean, more times it has than not, but still, there's trade-offs.
And you bet on yourself. And I think that is so many people do not do that. And I really truly believe that we're born here to do that more often than not and take risks. And I'm very similar to you, where I've tried a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors and bet on myself. And, a lot of them didn't work out, and some of them are growing legs and moving forward. And, but yeah, I think that's, that's great. Speaking of successes, let me ask you this. Would you mind sharing with us one of your more like favorite successes, that you were involved with or, created solely?
Yeah. I mean, so I'll share. So one is when I kind of started to get excited on apartments, this was in 2014. And I'd been focused primarily on office and warehouse and some land stuff and single family homes. And I got, there were these two people who, they outsourced the redevelopment of a, smaller apartment project. It was 23 units. And, it was, everyone got evicted, taken to the studs. And I was the, construction manager, project manager, development manager on that. And, that project really worked out well. And it was a great deal of fun to get into that detail and be working with the contractors, and it was a real contribution to the neighborhood too. It was a really kind of blighty building, and when we were done, it was a real nice addition to the neighborhood, and got occupied really quickly, and it generally worked out from that perspective. So that was a lot of fun, and it was a great deal of fun.
Yeah, sounds like a huge success, and this was your first, leap of faith into commercial real estate, as far as being
not commercial real estate,
investor,
but like
developer
for apartments. It was my first apartment project.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd done other types of projects before, and that was it was a nice size because it was in an hour from where I lived. And so I could really get my hands on it, and every single unit I knew, every little piece of, all the detail I knew. And so, sometimes if you're, working on 100 units, or you're just a capital provider on with a GP team, or you're just the asset manager, you don't have the full, kind of understanding of the property and the money going in, and then hopefully when it's rented up, the money coming out. And so with this project, I was able to do that, and it helped me really understand apartments and how resilient they are. And so I was like, oh wow, this is a lot better than office, or at least for me. And so I started to slowly transition.
Yeah, that's awesome, and very exciting and very admirable. So kudos to you on that. And I know you more deals than that, right? That you've been involved with that have been successes. And let me ask you this: what would you say is one of the most valuable things that you learned from that one success in particular?
Yeah. So my role on that was the development manager. So I did the construction basically. And was to, do all of the construction and get it completed, at which point my job was done. And then the people who had hired me, they got it leased up and they did the asset management. And, for reasons I still don't totally understand, they had a hard time managing that property. But what I learned is, from a product perspective, that despite what I viewed as their poor management, the property did well, and it continued to have rent growth, and it continued to have full occupancy, and it continued to be successful despite the owners really. And that's where I was like, wow, this is really a compelling product type, because there's 23 spaces in this particular apartment building. Whereas like an office property I'd done prior, there was, I remember there was 3 stories. Each floor was 33,000 feet. So it was about 100,000 square feet. And so if one of those tenants, like, which happened, didn't move in or whatever, like that's like, really damaging to that investment. Whereas in an apartment complex, 1 unit goes down or 2 units goes down. If you've got, enough, on a percentage basis, it's you're safe. So, that was the big learning from that. And also it was a well-located property in a very strong market. So that's the other thing I learned, is it was in, it was in the wine country in Northern California. So it's in a very strong market. And I think, right now, like if you're somebody who owns an apartment building, you want to, generally, unless you have specific market knowledge, like you want to be in a strong market right now versus a weak market. Because when the, economy or whatever goes down, those weaker markets get hit the most, because people want to, whatever, they get hit the most. So you want to be in a, for being in a stronger market was really helpful.
Yeah. Location, right?
It's no joke.
And so I have a question for you about property managers. In your experience, what percentage of them are excellent or do not even excellent? What percentage of them do a good job? And secondly, any advice on like vetting property managers?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say like what percent of them do a good job or not. And I think, the answering of your question has a lot to do with one's personality type. And I wouldn't necessarily say my personality type or management style is like the best at all, but it's just like who I am. And so like, for me, just because you have a property manager and just because people say, oh, real estate's a hands-off investment, I don't necessarily think that's true at all. So I'm very engaged with the property manager. And then through that engagement, there's a building of trust that occurs. And as that trust is built, then, like for me, I can like ease up on, interacting with them. Now, also part of that also means that, if I'm interacting with them, I need to understand their style and not be a micromanager and listen and all that stuff. It's a real, it's even though they work for you and you can fire them, like it's a real partnership. Those are my thoughts on property management is to stay super involved, ask lots of questions, don't be fearful to ask questions. I ask a lot of questions. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I'm also, it feels like I'm hearing in there the first few months you're really involved. It's almost like the first few months you're essentially training them, right? And you're learning, from them, and then you can lighten up as you see they're, doing the stuff that they built the trust, right? So
yeah. I mean, and there's so many like, like kind of like quotes out there about, keeping your eye on the ball and being involved. And when that stops happening, generally like bad things can start to occur, not always, but like generally. And so like that involvement, engagement is really important. Now, at some point you might build so much trust that like, you don't need to like be as intensely involved, but, you're still going to be involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and let me ask you this, because we talked a little bit about things going downhill. So this next question, it's a perfect segue into it, which is, would you mind sharing with the audience, one of your more incredibly difficult experiences and how you got through that / what you learned from it?
So in 2008, 2009, I was working with a investor, a person, really very successful person, lots of experience in the office sector. And we bought it was that building I was referring to a moment ago. We bought a 100,000 square foot building in Cupertino, California, which is where Apple is. And we had institutional equity, and I was the acquisition person, and we had tenants, kind of excited to move in, and it was going to be a successful investment, not a home run, but like the double at least. And all of a sudden, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. The kind of financial crisis happened. All tenants did not want to move; they just went into a holding pattern. And the institutional equity group, they said we're out, and the building went back to the lender, Prudential, who ended up holding on to it and doing quite well with it. And so what I learned there is the downside of downside risk, downside that things go badly, for beyond your control. Like right now, interest rates have gone up and up and up. And if you're an apartment investor and you don't have a rate cap in, or, some method, means to address that, like you're hurting. And that's not necessarily because you have bad management. It's, bad luck. Like in real estate, bad luck is a real thing, bad timing. So that was very humbling. But I did learn downside risk. So as time went by, and when I've talked to investors about downside risk, I mean, I can tell a personal story about it that set me back personally. So that's what I learned there. But the other part that I learned about that is if you have like the financial wherewithal in an investment to hold on tight, then things will get like better. Real estate is cyclical, and if you can figure out a way to keep a property and maintain it over time, like it will start to go back up, and the more value will be created, rents will go up, and the value will return. It just might be long.
Yeah, I love that. In some of these lessons, it's sort of my belief that we can't actually learn some of these lessons without going through them, right? We can learn it from mentors. If we're working with a mentor and they can say, hey, this might be happening, but nobody, knew what was going to happen in like 2008, what was going to happen, right? I mean, a few people, there's that movie, The Big Short, and maybe just a handful of people, right? But
right.
yeah, so stuff like that, we really can't see coming down the pike. And so we need to learn from that. And it sounds like I want to take my hat off to you, because you didn't go, this is horrible, like forget this, and I'm going to go like live under a bridge somewhere,
Right.
San Diego, preferably where the weather's nice. You don't have to worry about winter too much, right?
Right.
But like, so you got back into it, and sounds like you did learn a lot from that. And then now you have a story that you can share with, people that are getting new into investing, or, people that want to invest through you, sort of thing. And, but also that one deal, because you didn't let it hold you back, and you had a few before, and you've had quite a few afterwards. So that experience is going to carry through to you, through to this day and on into the future. So I've got a quick question for you. How many deals would you say that you've been involved in, all the way back to when you were a commercial broker and you were placing tenants? Like, we can count that as like one deal, just a super ballpark. I know it's kind of putting you on the spot.
I don't know. I used to have an Excel spreadsheet that calculated this, but I mean, because with the leasing, there's a lot of lease transactions. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, a lot, because I mean, yeah, I'm not going to be very helpful in this, but
that's okay.
Yeah,
I put you on the
lot.
spot. Like I said, maybe more than 50.
Yeah, maybe around there with the leasing. Yeah, probably. But I will say, going back to the quantity thing just for a minute, with investment in particular, like, I don't know that like making investments quantity, like there you might want to focus, like you might want to evaluate a lot of deals to do one. I don't know that for me, like, especially where I'm at now, I don't know that I would do 50 and hope that one works out. Right. I mean, obviously, right. But at the same time, I think that the best way to learn and get experience and make some money is to actually do a deal. So you don't, that analysis paralysis is a real thing.
Yeah, and it's real strong, right? And I'm glad you brought that up because earlier I was thinking, and that okay, and this kind of goes to trusting ourselves, right? Like, which is also a challenge for people. As I talk to a lot of people that are different, kind of like stuck at different like levels or whatever, but um, in the finding quality through quantity sort of like method or whatever, we're assuming that we are doing our best to create quality in the art, which you 1,000% would, I 1,000% would. It will not work if we're going to go just super sloppily and, throw. Actually, if you were to throw mud at a canvas, you might actually get that to work out. But like, you know what I'm saying? Not
Right.
trying and just
Right.
being super sloppy. So with that being said, I feel like a lot of people, when we are going into whatever next endeavor in our life, we will, it's almost like this fear in our heads, the back of our mind will go like, well, what if I fail at that? Well, that's a very real thing. But the sort of what if I fail at that is almost followed by, for me anyways, and it seems like a lot of people, what if I fail at that because I'm just not going to be, I'm not going to work hard at it, I'm not going to do a very good job. Well, that is not consistent with our personalities. And that's one of the weird self-limiting beliefs that does pop up for a lot of people, that they don't really realize, like this weird belief that, I'm not going to do a good job if I launch into my business. It's going to fail because I'm not doing a good job, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not, that's probably not going to be why it fails. You know what I mean?
Right. 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 I mean, I think fear is, for me, can get in the way in a nanosecond, and it doesn't show up like, oh, I'm feeling fearful and I have an awareness that I'm fearful. But it's showing up in other ways, procrastination, even, as just an easy example, or this model has to be perfectly right for me to like decide if this is a decent property, like whatever. It can just show up over and over again in all sorts of different ways. So fear is a real enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that we can work through this fear, and like you're saying, sometimes it's just really vague and almost like been
Right.
there for a few days or whatever before we decide to go ahead and tackle that thought head on. It's like in our subconscious. But um, one of the ways that we can work through a fear, like, hey, this deal that I'm analyzing has to be perfect, is to phone a friend, which I did
Right.
a few weeks ago. And you walked me through, you helped me with underwriting a particular project. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really appreciate you for that. And but so thanks again. And
Of
so
course.
with that being said, this is this leads me on to, we're getting close to wrapping this up. And so this question I love because it's a lot of fun. What would you do if you were to take everything you know now, your mindset and everything, and go back to age 18? What would you do to fast track success, in your life?
The way I would have answered this question like 5 years ago, 3 years ago, is I would have been is I would have the way I would have answered this question in the past has been, I would have taken a more linear career path. And so I have like very broad experience, which is great. You can say, oh, I have broad experience, but it's really it's also very that's what I chose. It also makes things a little bit more difficult. So as an example, if I had just done one thing like brokerage, if I'd done commercial brokerage and I got just stayed with that for 10 or 15 years, I would have probably a lot more capital, a lot more connections with capital to then be invest capital. But instead I'd done brokerage and investment and construction and development and asset management and worked in Arizona and California and other places in the country. And so I think that for somebody, and I would if my wife is an example of this, she's been very focused and linear in her career, and that's worked out really well for her, and that's works well for her like personality type. But that's not my personality type. My personality type has been to be focused in the realm of real estate and acquire these broad skills, but it's just it's a different path. It's a different path. And so sometimes I think, oh, had I been more linear, my success would have been greater and quicker. But, where I am today, I say, well, that's just who I am. So I can't, like, I'd have to be a different person. Right. So that's why it's an unsatisfying answer, probably. So I don't know that I would have changed really much, because that's kind of like who I am. And I'd have to change who I am to change, the recommendation. So maybe the best way to put it is, I admire people who have the kind of ability to just do their career is more linear. I admire that, and my guess is they might admire like me and the risks I've taken. So
Yeah, well, and I think also another way to put it is that you are who you are. So
right.
honor that. Don't resist that. Don't try to struggle. My dad said something to me when I was like a kid. He was like, I tried to be these different people, and I realized I can't. I have to be me. And that would be great advice to both of ourselves at age 18, and like relax, let go, and enjoy like the process. But I think what you're saying is like, don't resist who you are, and honor who you are, which is huge. And again, we define success for ourselves, and even like monetary success. If you and I think both are interested in that, and who's to say that's not right around the corner or about to explode for you this year? You're still involved in real estate, and you're still your sculptures. You just never know, right? And so it is important that we continue to bet on ourselves. And again, one of the things that you've done right that I really respect you for is betting on yourself over and over and over. I'm going to give this a shot, like 100%, and learn from it.
Yeah, and I would say that so maybe one thing that I've and I got this from a different podcast I was listening to, is that in all my endeavors, I probably have like two strengths, two, maybe just one or two big strengths. And that's like, and then everything else is like secondary, tertiary, whatever. And so my encouragement to myself would be to, spend time to understand what it is I'm really good at. And then, and as you were saying, then kind of go deep in that, and wherever, like whatever my career, is just be focused on developing those, one or two, not three, one or two strengths, because that's where you'll have, I think, the most success, is if you're just doing whatever your strength is.
I love that. And it's again, honoring yourself,
Right. Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on, mindset, and, how to go from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, or non-success to success mindset?
Yeah. So that goes back to, I think, fear. And so how one changes, I think the first is awareness. Am I in scarcity, or am I in abundance? Am I being fearful? Am I not being fearful? Is the fear showing up in some weird way? Then for me, I get kind of angry about it, in that I'll because I don't want to be fearful. So if I get frustrated that I'm fearful, then, I won't try to change the emotion, because I've tried, I'm not going to be good at that. But what I will do is I'll say, what's the next step I have to take? And I'll try to not have any emotion associated with the next step. And then I'll do that. And then what's the next one? Do that. And next thing, do that. And then do that. And that's how I'll move forward. So I'm no longer thinking, am I fearful, not fearful? I'm just doing. And, there's exercise. I do this cold tank, and, that'll change like my state, really fast.
Yeah, I bet. Mine's actually on its way, by the way, Peter. So
oh, wow.
Yeah, we've only been talking about it for about 2 years or something. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and before I had a cold tank, I would get a bowl and put water and ice in it, and just sit my head in there. That just changes your physiology. And so fear and mindset is like, your body is like whatever, whatever that state is completely connected to it. And like, I used to never believe this stuff. But
Well, and I love that you're getting into action. There's that
yeah,
whole, I forget, when it's a phrase about, guys that are in war, and, once they get into, action, that's how they can get out of the, paralyzing
yeah,
fear, right?
yeah,
Which
yeah.
I'm
Move your
totally
body.
ignorant of. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, it's like, okay, really. And then we're also talking about self-awareness. We've been talking about it this whole time, how that helps us to see, some people, or I would say the fear for me is having my patterns and habits set for me out of my fears, because I'm never willing to look at them. Like I can never afford this because I'm a broke type of person, not a rich type of
Right.
person,
Right.
as opposed to like, this looks fun. This looks great. How can I make it happen?
Right. And it's hard. I mean, I'm just learning, like, as you know, a lot of this mindset stuff. And, and truthfully, I thought it was all a joke. And then, but if you, kind of put whatever those assumptions are aside and like start listening to people, whether they're sports people, they're business people, hedge fund people, all sorts of, it's like, you'll find that, all of these, broadly speaking, these mindset practices are practiced by, all sorts of successful people in all sorts of industries.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, 1,000%. And I think, sports or athletes are one of the best ones to go to, because to be able to, perform like that, it's almost superhuman, on a
Yeah.
consistent basis. But there's investors that are performing on, seems like, a superhuman basis, and artists, and so it's great. As we're getting close to wrapping this up, would you mind sharing with us like one book recommendation, one that's been really impactful on you?
Yeah. So I think the Gap and the Gain, it's been a while. And I think, that's really, truthfully, you don't even have to read the whole thing. Just focus on the title and you're like, kind of get it. Right. But read it and you'll get deeper. But it's easy for me to think about what I haven't done, what I haven't accomplished, where my shortfalls are, and not think about the incremental gain. But if you get into that negative mindset of like where I haven't achieved my goals, it's just like, you're going down in the sewer. And where if you think about, what incremental gains, and I don't care how incremental they are, but if I do that, it'll build on itself and create momentum that's forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And because, that old saying, where focus goes, energy flows, right?
Yeah.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
The more we are focusing on, the wins, the more wins we're going to have. The more we focus on losses, unfortunately, losses will follow. So yeah. Okay, cool. Well, as we are getting closer to wrapping this up, let me ask you this, Peter. Again, thank you so much for spending time with me today. How can our audience support you? Are there any deals or any sort of, artists that you'd love to be connected with? And
yeah, I mean, I just say if something was interesting to you, feel free to reach out to me. I mean, I'm always less so deals right now. I'm just kind of in a holding pattern on that. But if there's deals, if you're an investor and you're, want to chat about investing in real estate, I'm happy to, chat with you. The best way to get a hold of me is by email, and that's peter@northlightgrowth.com.
yeah, great. And you have a website, same name as well, right?
It's a little broken, but yes.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Peter, for your time. Really appreciate, you spending time with us and, sharing more with us about yourself. And I learned a lot. And, so again, as always, love hanging out with you, Peter.
Awesome,
and,
man.
Yeah, with that being said, we'll go ahead and sign out. Thank you all for listening to another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It.
Are you ready to take your podcast to the next level? Introducing Chris Clark Media, your go-to solution for professional podcast editing and production services. At Chris Clark Media, we understand the power of a well-produced podcast. Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just starting out, our team of experienced editors is here to make your content shine. Why choose Chris Clark Media? We offer a range of services tailored to meet your unique needs. From seamless audio and video editing to captivating intro music and engaging sound effects, we've got you covered. Our skilled editors work diligently to enhance your podcast quality, ensuring crystal clear audio and a professional finish. No more worrying about background noise or inconsistent levels. We've got it handled. But that's not all. We also offer custom podcast branding services, creating eye-catching cover art and compelling promotional materials to help you stand out in the crowded podcasting space. Are you ready to elevate your podcasting game? Visit chrisclarkmedia.com today and explore our affordable packages. Let us handle the technicalities so you can focus on what you do best, creating amazing content. Chris Clark Media, your success, our expertise. Start your podcasting journey with us today.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.